When my wife told our friends I was rewriting history, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even correct her. She said I was twisting old conversations, changing details, making her look unreasonable. The room went quiet in that careful way people go quiet when they think someone might be unstable. She looked calm, confident, certain. I just sat there, listening, because the truth wasn't in my memory. It was in my phone, and I had screenshots she didn't know existed. Stay with me until the end of this story, because this wasn't about who remembered things differently. It was about who controlled the narrative. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't explode. It settled, slowly, quietly, permanently. It started with something small. It always does. We were at dinner with two other couples, nothing formal. Just wine, low lighting, quiet background music, the kind of night where conversations drift between work stress and vacation plans. Someone mentioned communication in marriage, how easy it is to misinterpret tone over text. Harmless topic. Laura smiled and said, "Daniel has a habit of rewriting history." She said it lightly, like a joke. Everyone laughed. I smiled too. "What do you mean?" one of our friends asked. She took a sip of wine. "He'll say I agreed to something when I didn't, or that I promised something I never promised. It's subtle, but it adds up." I felt the shift immediately. The air changed, because she wasn't joking anymore. "I don't do that," I said calmly. She looked at me with a soft expression, almost concerned. "You don't realize you do," she replied. That tone, measured, patient, controlled, as if I were confused. "I remember our conversations clearly," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "Daniel, last month you said I was fine with postponing the trip. I wasn't." I felt heat rise in my chest. "That's not what happened," I said. She smiled gently at the others. "See?" See. As if I had just proven her point. The rest of dinner moved on, but something had been planted. On the drive home, neither of us spoke at first. Then she said, "You embarrassed yourself tonight." "You embarrassed myself?" "Yes, you got defensive. I corrected you. You contradicted me in front of friends." Her voice wasn't angry. It was steady, firm. "I contradicted a false statement." She sighed. "Daniel, you do this often. You reshape things so you're right." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That's not true. You see, you can't even consider it." There it was again, that framing. Not disagreement, diagnosis. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Small moments. She would reference a past argument and describe it differently than I remembered. When I corrected her, she'd say I was minimizing or altering. "You told me you'd handle the budget. I said I'd review it with you." "No, you said you'd take care of it." "I never said that." She would look at me like I was lost, like I was misfiring internally. It wasn't loud conflict. It was erosion, subtle, slow. One afternoon, she brought it up in front of her sister. "Daniel swears he didn't say he'd skip my cousin's wedding, but he absolutely did." I said I might not be able to attend because of work, she corrected. Her sister looked uncomfortable. Laura shook her head gently. "No, you said you didn't want to go." The certainty in her voice made me doubt myself. For a moment. Just a moment. Later that night, I sat alone in the living room replaying that conversation. Had I said that? No, I was sure I hadn't, but the way she delivered it made me question everything. That was when I started checking. Not obsessively, just carefully. I scrolled back through old messages, our texts from that week, and there it was. Her, "Are you coming to the wedding?" Me, "I might have a deadline that week. I'll confirm closer to the date." That was it. No refusal, no dismissal, just uncertainty. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I took a screenshot. I didn't know why at first, just instinct. 2 days later, she brought it up again, this time in front of another couple. He flat out said he wasn't going, she told them. I didn't argue. I reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, scrolled, and turned the screen toward her. Her expression didn't change immediately. She leaned closer, read it, then leaned back. That doesn't show the whole conversation. It shows exactly what you referenced. You're being selective. I'm being accurate. She folded her arms. You screenshot everything now? No. Why would you need to? There was no anger in her voice, only implication, as if documenting reality was suspicious. That night, she didn't speak to me. The next morning, she was distant, and for the first time, I realized something. This wasn't about memory. It was about control, about narrative ownership. If she could establish that my recollection was unreliable, then her version would become default. And once that label sticks, rewriting history, it's hard to remove. A week later, she escalated it in front of her parents. We're having issues because Daniel keeps reframing conversations, she said calmly. It makes me feel gaslit. Gaslit. That word hit harder than anything before. Her father looked at me carefully. Is that true? I didn't answer immediately. I opened my phone again, scrolled further back, more screenshots, budget conversations, travel discussions, promises, tone, context. Clear, undeniable. I placed my phone on the table. I don't rewrite history, I said quietly. Laura's jaw tightened slightly. You think saving texts proves something? No, I said. It prevents distortion. Her mother shifted uncomfortably. Laura stood up. This is exactly what I mean. He needs proof to validate himself. I remained seated, because what she didn't realize was that I wasn't collecting proof for validation. I was collecting it for something else.
I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the argument, because of the pattern. Once you notice a pattern, you can't unsee it. It wasn't just that Laura remembered things differently. It was that she introduced her version in front of other people first. Always in public, always calmly, always framed as concern. I started reviewing older messages, not obsessively, methodically. 2 years back, 3. Trips we planned, money decisions, conversations about moving cities. Each time, she later claimed I had pushed something, resisted something, promised something. The texts told a quieter story, balanced, mutual, sometimes initiated by her. I didn't screenshot everything, only the moments that had already been disputed. That detail mattered. I wasn't building a case, I was verifying memory. 3 days later, she invited 2 friends over for coffee. I was in the kitchen when I heard her say it again. He tends to reinterpret events. It's subtle, but it makes you question yourself. I froze. One of her friends asked gently, "Like how?" "Like last year," Laura said. "He claims we agreed to refinance together. I was against it." That was new. I walked into the room calmly. "That's not accurate," I said. She sighed softly. "Daniel." Her friend looked between us. "I have the messages," I said. Laura's eyes sharpened. "Why do you keep saying that?" "Because we discussed it clearly. You're obsessed with receipts." I ignored that. I opened the thread, scrolled. There it was. Her message, "If rates drop below 4%, we should refinance." My response, "Agreed, let's monitor." I turned the phone toward her friend. Laura didn't look at it. "That's selective," she repeated. "Is it?" She finally glanced at the screen, read it, then leaned back. I must have forgotten that part. Forgotten. Not wrong, forgotten. Her friend excused herself soon after. When the door closed, Laura faced me. "You're humiliating me." "I'm correcting you. You're trying to prove I'm lying. I'm proving I'm not." Silence stretched. "You think this makes you look rational?" she asked quietly. "I think it makes the truth visible." She shook her head. You're collecting ammunition. That word stayed with me. Ammunition. As if truth was a weapon. That night, she didn't come to bed until after midnight. The next morning, she left early without saying goodbye. At work, I couldn't focus. Not because I was angry, because something deeper had shifted. I started replaying older moments in our marriage. Times when she told friends I overreacted during an argument. Times she said I misremembered who initiated therapy. Times she told her sister I had resisted buying our house. I searched those threads too. Therapy. Her. Maybe we should see someone. Me. If you think it'll help, I'm open. House purchase. Her. This place feels right. Me. Let's review the inspection first. No resistance, no hostility, just caution. But in retellings, caution became opposition. Processing became avoidance. Accuracy became rigidity. That afternoon, I received a message from her cousin. Hey, Laura mentioned you've been struggling emotionally. Everything okay? I stared at the text for a long time. Struggling emotionally. That was new. I replied simply, I'm fine. Why? She said you've been having trouble keeping things straight. Keeping things straight. The framing was expanding, from rewriting history to mental instability. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I opened our shared calendar. Recent entries. Therapy session scheduled next week. Couples counseling. I hadn't requested it. She had. Subject line, communication breakdown. I felt something settle inside me. This wasn't spontaneous. It was coordinated, slow, measured, not explosive conflict, narrative positioning. If enough people heard that I misremembered things, if enough small corrections made me appear defensive, if enough concern was expressed about my emotional state, then any future disagreement could be dismissed. You're doing it again. You're rewriting. You're confused. The label would stick. That evening, I approached her carefully. We need to talk, I said. She didn't look up from her laptop. About what? About the way you describe me to others. She closed the laptop slowly. You describe what I experience. You describe me as unstable. You describe me as inconsistent. That's not the same. She leaned back in her chair. You see how defensive you are. I'm not defensive. I'm precise. She gave a small, almost sympathetic smile. Daniel, not everything is a courtroom. Interesting choice of word. Courtroom. You've told people I struggle emotionally. I said you've been overwhelmed. You told your cousin I can't keep things straight. She paused. That's how it feels sometimes. Based on what? Our conversations. Show me one. She looked irritated now. I don't need to show you anything. But I can show you. I held up my phone, not aggressively, just steady. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You don't trust me. That's not the issue. It is. No, I said quietly. The issue is that you're reshaping things publicly. She stood up. You're paranoid. There it was, another escalation. Paranoid. I didn't raise my voice. I'm documented. She stared at me, and for a split second, just a fraction, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not anger, calculation, as if she was reassessing. You're exhausting, she said softly. Then she walked away. I remained in the living room, phone still in my hand, because I realized something else. She hadn't once denied the messages. She had reframed them. Selective, context missing, emotional, but never false, and that meant something. The next therapy session was in 3 days, and I already knew one thing. I wouldn't argue. I would bring evidence. Quietly.
The therapist's office was quiet in the way neutral spaces are designed to be. Soft lighting, neutral walls, 2 identical chairs facing a couch. Dr. Patel greeted us with a calm smile,
No assumptions, no sides. We sat down. Laura began. "I feel like Daniel distorts conversations," she said gently. "It makes me question my own memory." Dr. Patel nodded. "Can you give an example?" Laura didn't hesitate. "Last month we discussed postponing a trip. He insists I agreed. I didn't." Dr. Patel turned to me. "How do you remember it?" "I remember it differently," I said evenly. Laura sighed softly. "That's the problem. He always does." Dr. Patel leaned forward slightly. "Daniel, do you have a specific recollection?" "Yes." I reached into my pocket. Laura's body stiffened. "You brought your phone?" "Yes." Dr. Patel didn't look surprised. "Would it be helpful to review the message?" Laura crossed her arms. "This is exactly what I mean. He needs documentation." Dr. Patel looked at her calmly. "Documentation can reduce confusion." Silence. I opened the thread, scrolled, turned the phone so both could see. Her message. "Maybe we should move the trip to next month." My reply. "If that works better for you, I'm fine with it." Laura read it. Her face didn't change. "That's not the full conversation," she said. "It's the specific point you referenced." Dr. Patel turned to her. "Do you recall sending that?" Laura paused. "Yes, but the tone wasn't agreement." Dr. Patel nodded slowly. "So the disagreement may be about interpretation, not wording." Laura shifted in her seat. "He interprets everything literally." "And you interpret emotionally?" Dr. Patel asked gently. Laura didn't answer. Dr. Patel turned to me. "Daniel, why did you start saving screenshots?" There it was, the real question. "Because my memory was being questioned publicly." Laura exhaled sharply. "See? He thinks I'm attacking me." "I think you are reframing." Dr. Patel held up a hand slightly. "Let's slow this down." Silence settled again. Dr. Patel spoke carefully. "Laura, when Daniel produces documentation, how does that make you feel?" Laura stared at the floor. "Cornered." That word stayed in the room. "Cornered." "Why?" Dr. Patel asked softly. "Because it makes it look like I'm lying." "Are you lying?" I asked quietly. Laura looked at me. "No." "Then what is happening?" Her eyes watered slightly, but she didn't cry. "I feel dismissed in conversations," she said. "When I express something emotionally, he responds with facts." Dr. Patel nodded. "So you feel unseen?" "Yes." I processed that. "I respond with clarity because I don't want misunderstanding," I said. "And she may interpret that as emotional distance," Dr. Patel added. Laura looked at me again. "You don't react." "I process. It feels like indifference." "It isn't." Dr. Patel leaned back slightly. "There's a difference between emotional validation and factual agreement," she said. Laura wiped at her eye. "But he makes me feel wrong." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I don't try to make you wrong. You correct me. When the facts are wrong." There's that word again. Facts. Dr. Patel turned to Laura. "When you describe Daniel as rewriting history, what are you hoping others understand?" Laura hesitated. "That I'm not crazy." The room went still. "Not crazy." Dr. Patel's voice softened. "Has someone made you feel that way before?" Laura looked away. Silence stretched. Then she shook her head slightly. "No." But her hesitation said something else. Dr. Patel didn't push. Instead, she said, "Sometimes when we feel emotionally invalidated, we compensate by strengthening our narrative publicly." Laura's jaw tightened. "I'm not manipulating." "I didn't say you were." Another silence. Dr. Patel looked at both of us. "Daniel, do you ever doubt your own memory?" I answered honestly. "Yes, recently." Laura looked at me sharply. "Because you repeatedly describe events differently." Her eyes softened. For a moment, then hardened again. "You're still collecting evidence." "Yes." "Why?" Because I don't want to lose trust in myself." That landed heavier than anything else. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. "That's significant." Laura's breathing changed slightly. Slower. Measured. Dr. Patel leaned forward. "Laura, when you share concerns about Daniel's memory with others, what outcome are you seeking?" Laura stared at the floor again. "I want support." "For what?" "For feeling alone in conversations." That was honest, but it wasn't the whole truth. I felt it. There was more beneath it. Dr. Patel ended the session gently. "No conclusions today, just awareness." On the drive home, Laura didn't speak. Neither did I. But something had shifted. She hadn't denied the screenshots. She hadn't claimed fabrication. She had focused on feeling cornered. That meant the facts weren't the battlefield. Perception was. Later that night, I received a message from her mother. "Laura seems upset after therapy. She says you're making everything transactional." Transactional. I stared at the word. Facts equal transactions. Emotion equals authenticity. That was the equation forming around me. And I realized something else. If this continued, if the narrative that I was emotionally rigid became fixed, then facts alone wouldn't protect me. Because once someone is labeled emotionally deficient, their documentation becomes cold, their memory becomes suspect, and their silence becomes guilt. I opened my phone again, scrolled further back, and I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Not in our messages, but in hers. She had forwarded one of our private exchanges to someone else.
The forwarded message was from 8 months ago. I almost missed it, buried between routine texts and grocery lists. But there it was, a small arrow beneath one of my messages, forwarded. To her sister. The message itself wasn't dramatic. She had written, "I feel overwhelmed this week." I replied, "Let's break it down. What specifically feels heavy?" That was it. Simple, measured, supportive. But when I tapped into the forwarded thread, the context shifted. Her message to her sister read, "See what I mean? He turns everything into analysis instead of just comforting me." My stomach tightened. She hadn't forwarded the entire conversation, only that line. Not the follow-up where I said, "I'm here, we'll handle it together." Not the part where I asked if she wanted to talk later that evening. Selective. I scrolled further, more forwards. Not many, but enough. A budgeting discussion, a disagreement about visiting her parents, a conversation about scheduling therapy. Each time, a fragment, never the full exchange. Always the piece that could be interpreted as rigid, analytical, cold. I sat back on the couch and stared at the screen. This wasn't accidental misremembering. This was curation. The next therapy session was 2 days away. I didn't confront her immediately. I watched instead. That evening, she was unusually quiet. I asked about her day. "Fine," she said. "You seem distracted." "Just tired." Her tone was neutral, but there was tension in her shoulders, the kind that appears when someone is anticipating something. Later, while she showered, her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't touch it, but the screen lit up. Her sister's name. The preview read, "Be careful what you share. He's clearly tracking things." Tracking things. That was how it was framed. Not remembering, tracking. I stepped back from the counter, heart steady, mind clear. The next session began with Laura speaking first again. "I feel like we're becoming adversarial," she said. Dr. Patel nodded. "What makes it feel that way?" "He monitors conversations." I waited. "Monitors?" Dr. Patel asked. "He scrolls back, screenshots, keeps receipts." Dr. Patel turned to me. "Daniel?" "I verify when I'm accused." Laura shook her head slightly. "You're building a file." That word again. File. Weaponized documentation. I took a breath. "There's something else," I said calmly. Laura's eyes flickered. Dr. Patel looked at me. I discovered several of our private exchanges were forwarded. Laura's posture changed, subtle, rigid. Forwarded? Dr. Patel asked. To her sister. Silence. Laura looked directly at me. You went through my phone? No, I said. It's visible in the message thread. Dr. Patel leaned slightly forward. Laura? She hesitated. I shared pieces, she admitted. Why pieces? I asked gently. Because I needed someone to understand how it felt. But the pieces lacked context. They captured the tone. No, I said quietly. They captured fragments. Dr. Patel remained still, not judging, just observing. Laura's voice hardened slightly. You're doing it again, turning it into evidence. I'm pointing out incompleteness. You're obsessed with being right. I'm concerned about narrative shaping. That phrase made her flinch. Dr. Patel intervened softly. Laura, when you forward partial conversations, what outcome are you hoping for? She looked at the floor. Validation. For what? For feeling unheard. Do you feel unheard? Yes. Even when he asks clarifying questions? She paused. It feels clinical. I nodded slowly. I ask specifics because I don't want assumptions, and that feels distant, she replied. There it was again, distance. I leaned forward slightly. When you forward fragments, it creates distance too. She looked at me sharply. How? Because you're inviting others into incomplete narratives. Dr. Patel watched carefully. Laura, does Daniel know when you share these messages? Laura shook her head. No. Why not? Because he'd react. I'm not reacting. I'm dissecting. Silence. Dr. Patel folded her hands. There's a pattern here, she said gently. Daniel preserves context. Laura curates experience. Neither of us spoke. That doesn't mean either of you is malicious, Dr. Patel continued, but it does mean perception is being shaped. Laura's breathing changed again, slower, measured. Are you trying to build a case against me? She asked suddenly. No, I said. I'm trying to prevent one. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means if the narrative that I'm emotionally unreliable spreads far enough. I let the sentence hang. She understood. Dr. Patel looked between us. Laura, have you ever described Daniel's memory or stability to others beyond your sister? Laura hesitated. Too long. Yes, she said finally. To whom? My mother. And how did you describe him? As confused sometimes. There it was. Confused. Not rewriting, not analytical. Confused. I felt the room shift, because that word crossed a line. Dr. Patel didn't rush. She asked calmly, Do you believe Daniel is confused? Laura swallowed. No. Then why use that word? Silence filled the room. Not heavy, just revealing. And for the first time, Laura didn't have a reframing ready.
Laura didn't answer Dr. Patel right away. She stared at her hands, then at the floor, then at nothing. I didn't mean confused the way it sounds, she said finally. How did you mean it? Dr. Patel asked. Laura exhaled slowly. I meant disconnected. From what? I asked quietly. From how things feel. That was closer to the truth, but not the whole truth. Dr. Patel's voice remained steady. Laura, when you described Daniel as confused to your mother, what were you hoping she would think? Laura hesitated again. That I wasn't overreacting. And if she believed he was confused, Dr. Patel continued, then my reactions would make sense. There it was. Validation through destabilization. Not malicious, but strategic. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Dr. Patel turned to me. How does hearing that make you feel? I answered honestly.
Relieved. Laura looked up sharply. Relieved? Yes. Why? Because now I understand the motive. Silence. You weren't trying to rewrite history. You were trying to protect your version of it. Laura's shoulders dropped slightly. Dr. Patel nodded. That's an important distinction. Laura's eyes were glossy now, but she wasn't crying. I felt small in some conversations, she admitted, like I didn't have control. So you strengthened your narrative externally, Dr. Patel said. Yes, and in doing so, you weakened his. Laura closed her eyes briefly. I didn't think of it like that. I spoke carefully. When you say I'm confused, it plants doubt. I know. When you say I'm confused, it plants instability. She nodded slowly. I didn't realize how far it was spreading. It spreads quietly, I said. Like erosion. That word settled between us. Erosion. Dr. Patel leaned forward slightly. Laura, do you believe Daniel is emotionally weak? Laura looked at me directly. No. Do you believe he rewrites history? No. Then what is happening? Laura swallowed. I feel unseen emotionally, and when he responds with facts, it feels like dismissal. I nodded. I can adjust tone. She looked surprised. You can? Yes. But I won't accept being labeled unstable. I understand. The air in the room shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Dr. Patel spoke gently. Here's what I see. Daniel protects accuracy. Laura protects emotional narrative. When those collide without communication, each feels invalidated. We both listened. The danger, she continued, is when emotional validation is sought by undermining factual stability. Laura's face tightened slightly. That's what I did. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't sarcastic. It was recognition. I felt something release inside me. Not anger, not triumph, just steadiness. I don't want to fight you, Laura said quietly. I don't want to defend myself constantly. Dr. Patel nodded. Then the solution is simple but difficult. Stop narrating each other to third parties. Laura gave a small, almost embarrassed laugh. That sounds obvious. It usually is, Dr. Patel replied. We left the session without tension. In the car, Laura broke the silence first. I'll talk to my mom. About what? That you're not confused. I smiled slightly. That would help. She looked me cautiously. Are you not angry? I was concerned. About what? That this was building towards something bigger. Like what? Like a story where I'm unreliable. She absorbed that. That wasn't my goal. I know. You do? Yes. She studied my face. You had screenshots ready before therapy. Yes. Were you building something? No. What then? A safeguard. She nodded slowly. Against me? Against erosion. That word again. She looked out the window. I didn't realize I was doing that. I know. A week later, she invited her mother over for dinner. No tension, no confrontation, just calm. Midway through the meal, Laura said gently, I need to clarify something I said before. Her mother looked surprised. Daniel isn't confused, Laura continued. We process differently. I framed it poorly. Her mother nodded. I never thought he was unstable. I felt something quiet settle. Not vindication, correction. Later that night, Laura sat beside me on the couch. She read some of the older messages too, she said. And?
I can see where I trimmed context. I didn't respond immediately. She turned toward me. I'm sorry. The word wasn't dramatic, it wasn't theatrical. It was simple. And it was enough. I didn't delete the screenshots. I didn't need to. They weren't weapons. They were reminders. Not that she lied, but that narratives can shift when feelings feel threatened. Months later, someone joked at a gathering about misremembering arguments. Laura smiled and said, "Memory is tricky. That's why context matters." She glanced at me, and this time there was no accusation in her eyes, only awareness. She once said I was rewriting history. What she didn't expect was that history was already written, and sometimes preserving it quietly is the strongest response. Not to win, not to expose, but to prevent erosion before it becomes collapse. And that's the difference between defense